In the heart of South Africa, beneath the relentless sun and endless skies, an energy revolution is quietly gaining momentum. But behind the headlines, a billion-dollar question looms. Will this bold push for battery storage finally solve South Africa's crippling power crisis, or are deeper currents at play? The stakes have never been higher, and what happens next could shape the future, not just for South Africa, but for the global energy market. Imagine a nation where rolling blackouts are a grim, everyday reality. Now picture a radical promise, ending chronic outages and ushering in a new era of clean, reliable power. That's the narrative South Africa's government is selling with its Battery Energy Storage Independent Power Producers Procurement Program, better known as BSIP-PPP. But as the dust settles on the program's third major tender, a new set of winners has emerged, raising pressing questions about competition, transparency, and the promises of green technology. This is more than an energy story. It's a high-stakes economic experiment, one that could redefine how emerging economies leapfrog from fossil-fueled dependency into a renewable-powered future. So, who are the real winners? And does this battery boom signal progress, or mask a new kind of risk? Let's rewind for a moment to understand why the world is watching. South Africa, once a regional economic powerhouse, has spent the last decade grappling with a crippling power crisis. Aging coal plants, chronic underinvestment, corruption scandals, and surging demand have combined to create rolling blackouts, or load shedding, that disrupt daily life, strangle businesses, and cost the economy billions each year. Every South African has felt the sting. In major cities, elevators freeze between floors, traffic snarls as signals die, and restaurants scramble for candlelight service. On the global stage, the power crisis has dented investor confidence and made headlines, casting a shadow over a country rich with promise and potential. But the seeds of change have been quietly germinating. For years, reformers and entrepreneurs have argued that unlocking South Africa's abundant wind and solar resources could be the solution. The catch? Renewable power is notoriously intermittent, especially when the grid itself is creaking under strain. This is where battery energy storage enters the story, a technological leap that promises to store energy produced when the sun shines or the wind blows, then release it when demand surges. In theory, it's the missing piece in the renewable energy puzzle, a way to stabilize grids, slash emissions, and reduce costly reliance on fossil fuel peaker plants. South Africa's government, under mounting pressure to act, launched the BSIP-PPP in waves, offering private companies the chance to build, own, and operate battery storage sites across the country. The third window, announced in 2024, is by far the most ambitious. 616 megawatts of battery capacity spread over 5 sites in the Free State province, representing a ZAR 9.5 billion 531 million investment. From 33 eager bidders, only 2 names emerged victorious. Norwegian renewable giant Scatec clinched the Haru Bes project, 123 MWh 492 MWh, and local powerhouse Mulilo, majority-owned by Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, captured the remaining 4 projects, Merapi, Theseus, Harvard, and Everest, totaling 493 MW 1,972 MWh. The winners are poised to change the country's energy map. But, as insiders and experts warn, success is about far more than just installing batteries. To grasp the magnitude, consider the numbers. South Africa's goal is to add at least 3 gigawatts of new renewables per year, ramping up to 5 GW by 2030, to meet surging demand and replace aging coal capacity. Yet bottlenecks abound. The national utility Eskom still relies heavily on coal, over 80% of output, and diesel-powered turbines during peak hours. But diesel is expensive, dirty, and often in short supply. The country's grid infrastructure is stretched thin, limiting how much clean energy can actually be integrated. That's where these batteries come in. Under 15-year contracts, Eskom will use the new battery farms to balance the grid and smooth out the peaks and troughs of renewable supply. In principle, this should reduce reliance on diesel plants, cut carbon emissions, and help South Africa meet its climate targets, while avoiding blackouts that have become all too familiar. But there's a catch. Dominance in this space now rests overwhelmingly with Mulilo, which holds more than 65% of total awarded battery capacity across the first 3 BSIP-PPP rounds, over 1.1 GW. Industry analysts, like Slajana Junisic, note this concentration raises risks of market capture and limits competition, even as foreign players like Scatec try to nibble at the margins. Claims of a thriving competitive market demand evidence, says energy economist Kagosiencio Ramagopa. It's a pointed reminder that headlines about open bidding can disguise entrenched interests or opaque selection processes. Was this genuinely a race between equals, or a foregone conclusion favoring incumbents bolstered by international capital? Then there's the technical side. South Africa's grid is infamous for its fragility. Frequent outages, maintenance backlogs, and sabotage have left even the most ambitious projects vulnerable to underperformance. Battery storage can provide real grid stability if the technology is properly integrated and maintained, argues Jan Fourie, a regional renewables executive. But that "if" looms large. Installations must withstand harsh climatic swings, supply chain hiccups, and the ever-present threat of cost overruns in a volatile currency environment. Consider also the price. At an average tariff of ZAR 2.27 per kilowatt hour, the battery projects aren't exactly cheap. For a nation where unemployment and inequality run deep, critics argue the cost will inevitably be borne by end consumers, unless the projects can prove their worth in avoided blackouts and reduced diesel bills. Is this a necessary investment in future resilience, or a financial burden in disguise? Ownership structures further complicate the picture. Skatex Haru project, for example, is split between the Norwegian parent firm, local investment funds, and a 5% community trust. Mulilo touts its local credentials, but is majority-owned by Denmark's Copenhagen infrastructure partners. As the world pivots to renewables, are the economic gains and jobs from these projects truly staying in South Africa, or are profits destined to flow offshore? Social equity, too, is on the line. Beset by historical inequality, any major infrastructure project in South Africa carries expectations. Will communities benefit through jobs, skills training, and profit sharing? Or will batteries become just another emblem of promise unfulfilled, a new technology layered atop old divisions? Transparency, or the lack thereof, is an ever-present challenge. As analyst Clyde Mallinson warns, efficient execution and truly open procurement are critical if South Africa is to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. Lofty headlines about billions invested and megawatts secured offer cold comfort if projects are delayed, underdeliver, or become mired in disputes. All eyes now turn to the future. By January 2026, financial close must be achieved. By January 2028, the batteries are expected to be fully operational. Underneath the optimism, uncertainty simmers. Will Eskom's grid be ready to absorb and distribute this new battery-stored power? Can local companies keep up with demanding supply schedules and technical requirements? Will costs spiral out of control as the rand fluctuates and global supply chains remain unsettled? Even as international observers hail South Africa's bold step, there are rising murmurs. Could the dominance of a single player like Mulilo create the very risks the program was meant to avoid? Will the economic and social dividends trickle down, or will they be captured by global conglomerates and well-connected insiders? If these projects deliver, on time, on budget, and with real impact, they could be the spark that finally lights South Africa's low-carbon future. But if they stumble, the fallout could reverberate far beyond the Free State's rolling hills. So, as bulldozers prepare to break ground and contracts are inked in boardrooms from Johannesburg to Oslo and Copenhagen, one urgent question remains. Are these new battery projects the breakthrough South Africans have been waiting for, or the beginning of a new, more complicated power struggle? And just what hidden challenges might still derail South Africa's billion-dollar battery gamble? The answers, it turns out, are anything but simple. So, what happens next for South Africa's battery revolution? With contracts signed and the clock ticking, the world watches with a mixture of hope and skepticism. The stakes couldn't be higher, not just for investors and politicians, but for millions of South Africans whose daily lives are shaped by the reliability or failure of their country's power grid. Let's peer into the near future. By January 2028, these massive battery projects are supposed to be fully operational. Picture it. 5 gleaming new battery storage facilities, quietly humming somewhere in the Free State, absorbing cheap off-peak power and unleashing it during the dreaded hours of load shedding. For many, this vision feels almost utopian, a South Africa where lights stay on, hospitals run uninterrupted, and businesses thrive without the daily threat of blackouts. But is it that simple? Experts warn of a complex set of obstacles lurking beneath the surface. Grid capacity is still a major bottleneck, says Anton Eberhard, an energy policy veteran. Even if you inject more battery storage, if the transmission network can't handle the load, we'll still face limits on how much renewable energy we can really use. This highlights a stark reality. Batteries alone aren't a silver bullet. Without massive parallel investment in grid infrastructure, new bottlenecks could simply trade places, pushing the crisis down the line. Then there's the question of whether South Africa's notoriously troubled state utility, Eskom, can adapt fast enough to take full advantage of these modern technologies. Eskom is set to contract these battery projects for 15 years, using them for grid balancing. But Eskom's own financial woes, management turmoil, and aging coal fleet create a minefield of risks that no battery array can magically dissipate. On the bright side, these projects represent a rare alignment of government ambition, international finance, and private sector innovation. Mulilo, backed by deep-pocketed Danish infrastructure funds, is betting its future and reputation on the success of these mega batteries. Scatec, too, is committing over $120 million to its Haru BESS project. The scale is unprecedented in southern Africa. But with only 2 companies winning all 5 sites, market concentration becomes a double-edged sword. On one hand, large players with proven experience may deliver faster results. On the other, such dominance raises fears about competition, price setting, and long-term market health. Slajana Junisic, an energy analyst, cautions, there's a risk that a few players start to dictate terms. Transparent procurement and regulatory oversight will be crucial to keep the process fair and above board. Social equity is the next frontier. While tariffs for these battery projects average around ZAR 2.27 per kilowatt hour, a competitive rate on paper, the true test will come when these costs are passed on to households already struggling under South Africa's high energy prices. Will this lead to a more inclusive, resilient electricity system, or simply shift the burden from one group to another? For communities near the new battery installations, the impact could be transformative. The Haru BESS project, for example, reserves a 5% stake for a local community trust. If managed well, this could channel millions into local health, education, and job creation schemes. Yet history teaches caution. Too often, such promises are lost amid bureaucracy, mismanagement, or outright corruption. Technological risks also loom. Battery storage is evolving rapidly, and even state-of-the-art systems today could be outpaced by tomorrow's innovation. Will South Africa's new assets become obsolete before they've paid off, or will they set a foundation for nimble, future-proof infrastructure? As the global energy transition accelerates, South Africa's moves are being closely watched across Africa and beyond. If these projects succeed, they could provide a blueprint for other countries facing similar crises, how to leapfrog from coal dependency to a smarter, more flexible energy grid. Does this mean batteries are a guaranteed breakthrough? Not quite. Success, as countless reports warn, depends on a delicate choreography, project execution, community involvement, financial discipline, and relentless technical oversight. Any misstep could trigger cost overruns, public backlash, or even technical failure on a grand scale. But the opportunities are real. Curtailing the use of diesel-fueled open-cycle gas turbines, OCGTs, during peak demand could slash both costs and emissions. By freeing up grid space, these batteries may finally allow South Africa to unlock its immense wind and solar resources, pushing the nation closer to its goal of 3 to 5 GWs of new renewables each year by 2030. That would be a game changer, not just for energy, but for the economy, public health, and the environment. So, what can we learn from South Africa's audacious battery gamble? First, ambition matters. In a world bogged down by incremental change, the sheer scale of these projects is a powerful statement. It says, big problems require big commitments, even if they are not risk-free. Second, scrutiny is essential. As Dr. Clyde Mallinson, another energy expert, puts it, transparent procurement and efficient execution are vital. If we get this wrong, we risk fueling skepticism and losing public trust. Citizens, journalists, and watchdogs must keep a vigilant eye on every stage, from tender awards to final commissioning. This is not just about technology, it's a test of governance. Third, no single technology solves everything. Batteries, while revolutionary, must be part of a broader ecosystem that includes grid upgrades, renewable generation, demand management, and robust institutions. Integrated planning is key. Fourth, social benefits must be real, not just on paper. Investment in local communities, fair tariffs, and inclusive ownership are not side notes. They're central to long-term success. The Haru BESS Community Trust is a step in this direction, but the real impact will be measured in tangible improvements to people's lives. Fifth, time is of the essence. Delays jeopardize both credibility and financial returns. Window 3's deadlines, commercial close by January 2026, operations by 2028, set a tight schedule in a notoriously difficult sector. Other countries will be watching these timelines as an indicator of South Africa's institutional capacity. For the viewer, whether you're an energy enthusiast, investor, or simply someone who wants the lights to stay on, the lessons are profound. The story of South Africa's battery push is a microcosm of the global energy transition, its hopes, its challenges, and its messy realities. If you're in another country facing similar blackouts or planning your own energy transition, study this experiment closely. Demand transparency. Watch for who benefits and who doesn't. Push for systems that combine ambition with accountability. And if you're in South Africa, this is your moment to ask questions, join community consultations, or even participate in local trusts designed to share the spoils of this new energy age. The future is being built right now, often in your own backyard. Now let's come back to the question we started with. Are these battery projects a real breakthrough, or a new minefield of risks and power struggles? The answer is both, and that's the paradox at the heart of every energy revolution. The potential is real: cleaner air, stable power, new jobs, and a chance to leapfrog into a modern grid. But the risks of market capture, social backlash, technical failure are just as real. The difference will be made not by technology alone, but by leadership, vigilance, and a relentless focus on public benefit. Here's a surprising fact few realize. South Africa's Window 3 battery projects, if delivered on time and on budget, will make this country the largest utility-scale battery market in Africa. That puts South Africa not just on the map, but at the very frontier of the global battery revolution. So, will South Africa's batteries light the way out of darkness, or become another chapter in the country's long story of missed opportunities? Only time and continued public scrutiny will tell. If you found this deep dive useful, subscribe for more untold stories on the world's energy transitions. Share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think is the biggest hidden obstacle facing South Africa's battery plans? And if you have local knowledge or want to help shape a fairer energy future, don't just watch from the sidelines.